believe like a very senior captain at FedEx is making over $1 million a year. I mean,
Wow.
it's stupid. It's stupid money. So I mean, it is one of the few jobs out there that I would consider more of a trade than anything else, where you can become a millionaire
Mhm.
in a pretty at a pretty decent trajectory or rate. And it was really the first time I was going to be flying in like really like hard IFR conditions because it's pitch black out there, right? Pitch black. Can't see anything once you take off and you're flying towards the Everglades in southern Florida. And I'll never forget. I took off and started climbing out, and within a matter of moments, I felt like I was spinning. I said, "Okay." Of course, immediately jumped on these are like UAPs. What the hell am I looking at? But as a
Yeah.
pilot, I'm like, okay, let me quickly check my what I with the tools that I have at my disposal. So like I quickly eliminated those possibilities, which typically are like the highest likelihood of an encounter, right? But the fascinating thing is, as I'm watching, they disappear at the exact same spot in the sky.
All right. Joey, welcome. You're an aviator, drone expert, all these things. But first of all, I know you as a Florida man. So would you like to address the loss of the greatest Florida man of all time, Hulk Hogan? What do we what do we do about that? Have you done like a flight in his honor with a banner or something?
No, no flight, not yet. But actually, that was one that actually I was reading the news yesterday on the bus from the airport, and actually kind of like got me a little bit because I grew when growing up in Florida. He's from the Tampa area. I'm from the Tampa area, and funny enough, when I was about 10 years old, I played on the same hockey team as his son. So he'd make appearances into the locker room and do his whole Hulk Hogan thing, you know. So it was pretty neat. And then as I got older, there were a few instances where one memory I raced him on my jet ski. He had a jet ski, I had a jet ski because he lives right on the water, or he did in Clearwater Beach, and was out one day, and there he was, and raced the Hulkster. So so definitely, yeah, growing up alongside his kiddo and everything. I didn't know him too well, but he was such a presence, man. Like, uh, yeah, there's not many like celebrity deaths that get me, but that one kind of was like, all right, I'm actually a little sad about that one, you know. But yeah, he's a legend. He's a legend. But no, no flight yet. No flight yet. I might be going flying here sometime in the next 2 hours. I'm due. So, yeah, yeah, maybe I'll throw that one in his honor.
No time to paint the plane orange and blonde or whatever in his honor.
Yeah, no.
Uh, but so no, needless to say, that one hit you harder than Aussie then. Or
Yeah, no, Ozzy is great. I mean, man, I think we're about the same age, but when he had his reality show, that was my real introduction to Ozzy Osbourne. But no, it was sad, but it was kind of like you felt like it was coming. He was one of those guys you felt like it was coming, right? Like I felt like he died a long time ago. Anyways, like I thought he was on
oh yeah,
the downfall 20 years ago, right? Even during that show, it looked like he had Parkinson's, you know?
well, I
So
was already sad during the show because he seemed like he had all the diseases already, and I didn't know him initially from the show. Like I heard the riffs in the hockey rinks, right, in the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
arenas.
yeah, yeah.
So for me, it was already sad that this guy who seemed like some kind of powerful wizard was already so weak. And that was 25
You're
years
right,
ago.
and honestly, he's probably was on borrowed time as it is. I mean, it's I mean, I hate to say it, but I mean, all the drugs and partying and everything else. I mean, he was on borrowed time. So, but regardless, I mean, it was sad, but it didn't get me like the Hulkster for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Before we get into we're gonna fly on the wings of love in a moment, but one more thing about Florida. Is it enough now? Because you and I, for the past 10 to 15 years, we were shunned into a corner for being Florida ice hockey enthusiasts. I remember conversations with you specifically about 10 years ago when we knew the greatest goalies, Russian ones. We knew that Russia was now producing the goalies, not Finland or
Yeah.
Sweden or any of that
Yep.
nonsense. And we knew that there's no state tax and they have an unfair advantage. And it was coming. I was literally called a niche fetishist by some Canadians for liking the hockey teams in Florida. So, but is it enough now for the long-term health of the game? What is this, like 6 championships in 8 years, or
Yeah, I think it was 6 in a row. I think the Florida team has been in it 6 years in a row. Not, not winning it 6 years in a row. But look, I'll say this. I think growing up in Florida, I got for many, many years, every time I would travel somewhere, say, oh, what sports do you play? Oh, I play hockey. Oh, in Florida, right? It was, oh, every time. It was like without failure, right? But it's like actually since 92 when the Lightning started, like hockey started blowing up, right? Much like the state of California. Like California is very similar. Hockey's huge out there. So, for the longest time, it was everyone poo-pooed, playing hockey, being from Florida. And, the Lightning, being a diehard Lightning fan, they stuck for eternity, right? Forever. But stuck with them through thick and thin, and it was some of the greatest times of my life as a sports fan when they went to the Cup 3 years in a row. And really, the past 10 years, they've been dynamo, right? And they've passed that. They've really passed that torch to the Florida Panthers, who I also, enjoy watching. I root for. Been great for the game. I think the Panthers are going to be another dynamo wagon next season, since they re-signed everyone. But I do think, look, Tampa's on the decline. They have maybe one or two more seasons where they may have a shot if they pull in some of the right bottom six forwards.
Yeah.
But Florida, I think, is going to be there for sure the next couple years. But look, everyone has their ups, everyone has their downs. It's all cyclical, but I think it's been incredible for the game, for the growth. But the Florida dynasty is going to have its downfall here soon enough. So, but it's been amazing, and I've been happy to brag about it and talk about it, and especially rub it in the face of Leafs fans.
This is, yeah, for you and I'm so happy. This is the one thing out of many things that I've been right about in my life. This one was one of those that if there was any way to bet money on this, if there was any market, I'd be rich. But I was right about Vasilevsky, your goalie. I was right about the overall, like, all of this is going to move to the no tax states because what the players bring home out of their take home salary, something like 15% more money, or it's something like it's truly
Something
unfair.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah, compared to East Coast or Canada where the state taxes are higher, California, all that. So, do you think now that we've been proven right though, do you think they should change the rules? Because enough is enough. Like now, I think what just because Florida might be over, it's just going to move to Texas then or somewhere where there's the same setup.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept. I'd be curious how they would do that, right? I mean, from a contractual standpoint, like what that looks like where would they get that extra? I mean, it would be like baseball maybe, where they're like these teams like have subsidies that they kind of like pay into the other teams and out of these states, right? I don't know. So it's an interesting concept. I do think the rules need to change. I don't think it'll ever be perfect just because the way the political system works and other aspects, players' contracts, but I do think there needs to be some change for sure, right? Because I'm all about the competitiveness of the league, and that's what makes the NHL so amazing. Is even the worst teams, they're still competitive. It's still exciting to watch. So if we lose that, then the game will just decline over time, and it's been on the rise. So whatever the game has to do to keep that in motion, they need to do it.
Yeah, and obviously Canada, if there's some change, then Canada has a chance to get one. And I think for the health of the game, maybe a Canadian team winning at some point would be
And
a
how
nice.
I felt so bad. I mean, I was rooting for the Panthers, but how about the Oilers, man?
Yeah,
I mean, 2 years in a row to the same team. I mean, holy shit.
yeah.
Heartbreaking. I mean, I wasn't even rooting for them, but I mean, in the end, I mean, I felt for them. I mean, I really did. I really did. And then what really kind of got me excited was there was a rumor going around for a while that McDavid and the Lightning were talking this past off
Ah.
season.
Yeah, so he can get 15%.
Yeah,
So he
exactly.
can get more
Bringing
money.
it full
Yeah.
circle, bringing it full circle. Yeah, yeah. But I think that was just obviously the rumor boys going at it. So, but yeah, I felt so bad for the Oilers, especially Canada's been so long. Oh, was it 92? Was it
Yeah, I
last
think
cup
so.
Canada?
93 maybe Canadians.
Yeah. So that's just
Yeah,
painful,
it's
painful.
I have to say McDavid though, hockey hasn't had a real Messi since maybe Gretzky, where a casual viewer can go to a hockey game and within 10 seconds they'll be asking like, "Wait a minute, why is this guy so much better than everyone?"
Yeah,
So
you're right.
because he's not like amongst the greatest. I'd still say Alexander Barkov's the best player in the world from the Florida Panthers, but I'm saying uh, the way someone like Barkov or even McKinnon or someone is good is not visible to the casual viewer instantly. But McDavid is just so flashy and good.
You're absolutely right. His foot speed alone is something out of folklore. I mean, it really is. It's insanity. It really. I mean, I was pretty quick back in my heyday, but that is just another level. It's superhuman. I don't understand it. I really don't understand it when you physically see it.
And he doesn't have a championship because the rival team that he's been facing can hire a stay-at-home defenseman for $6.5 million because everybody wants to be in Florida playing golf and getting more
Yeah.
money, you know?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Oh,
also killed the Oilers though. I mean, they're goaltending. And it's like
but
football. You can't win without a quarterback, right? You just can't. You got to have that key piece, and
yeah,
rarely does it happen. So
yeah. Well, I'm so happy we got to gloat about Florida hockey for a moment. Now, flying, which is an individual sport. How did you how did you get into that? When did you know you want to fly?
but from the time I can remember. I mean, honestly, I was. I mean, my parents tell me I do have some memories of it. I guess I think maybe they're memories. Maybe it's just looking at pictures and recollection. But literally from the time I was little, looking up at the sky and airplanes and airplanes and airplanes. And I can remember I was 7 years old when I got my first flight sim. It was like just like the green, the blue sky, and like a little like gray cockpit. Right, it was nothing back then. This must have been '94, right? Maybe '95. So I just always knew I wanted to fly. It was always an interest. I honestly didn't ever see myself doing anything else at any given point. I mean, maybe there was a few times, I want to be a Navy SEAL. I want to be something kind of cool like that, right? I had those kind of moments, but flying, I think, was always it. I just knew. And if you talk to a lot of pilots, that's the same story you'll hear over and over and over again. There are some exceptions to that where some don't find their wings, no pun intended, until later in life. But I was also fortunate to grow up in the Tampa area where it has one of the largest Coast Guard bases in the United States, and they're flying C-130s out of there, right? Multiple airports, McBeal Air Force Base, which is Central Command for the U.S. military. So I mean, there's just so much aviation in the state of Florida, especially in the Tampa area, where I was just exposed to it as well. So I'm sure that played a part. But yeah, just always knew I wanted to do it. I just kind of stuck to it in various ways, whether that was flight sims or I was part of a explorers club, an aviation explorers club when I was like 12 to like 15. And I was fortunate my parents like kind of like supported driving me to the airport and everything else, right? So, definitely fortunate in that regard. But I just knew I wanted to do, man, since I was a little kid. And my career's taken me on a wild path that I didn't foresee. But still in aviation, just a new segment of aviation. But it's been wild. It's been wild.
So yeah, I as a kid I loved it for a long time. I was one of those kids my parents would slap that. Remember in the 90s and early 2000s for a kid flying, they would just flap that thing around your neck with the information of where you're going and then just drop me off at the airport and it's like you'll be fine. Somebody will help you.
Somebody will get it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and then like a tiny shaky propeller plane to Lapland, and I loved it all. And then at later stages in life, nowadays I'm not that comfortable on planes.
Yeah. Well, you got more to lose, right? You got more to lose. I mean, even look myself, I got thousands of hours of flight time, and even when I'm on an airliner, I was on one yesterday. I get nervous. I'm not in control, right? Versus when you're in control, you don't even think about it as a pilot, right? You're there to execute, fly safely, get either where you're going individually or get your passengers to where they're going safely. Like your job, that is your job. So you don't think about that. But when you sit in the back and you don't have control, we also got more to lose as we get older, right? We got family, we got kids. So I think it's just a natural evolution of air travel for I think both pilots and non-pilots as we get older.
Yeah. This whole project is about me getting uncomfortable with things. I'm thinking I do have a connection maybe in your region around Kiowa Island, the golf course. And I could sort of knock out a bucket list golf course and then fly in a small plane, which I've never done. I think that could be
Let's do it. Let's go. Let's go. Yeah, and actually, I've taken a few people up who have been absolutely scared of flying. I said, look, come up with me, right? Put them in control, let them fly, step them through everything, and they've now been able to actually fly with less anxiety and everything else. So where there's a will, there's a way for people who are scared or nervous or whatever it may be. But some are hopeless for sure. But I like to think most are.
yeah. So speaking of small planes, so you're as a kid, what age do you then get to try it for the first time? I'm assuming it's expensive, right? Like how
It's gotten a lot more expensive, which obviously from like an accessibility standpoint, it makes things very, very difficult. But when I started flying, well, I'll back up. You can start flying at any age, right? I mean, I have my oldest son is 11 and I'm a flight instructor. So when we go flying, I literally hand the controls over to him at various points and let him fly and he can start logging time, right? He's learning how to use the radios and all that stuff. And again, he's privileged that he can do that, of course. But point being is you can start flying at any age, as long as you're with a qualified pilot or flight instructor, whatever it may be, which is absolutely incredible. But to be able to solo an aircraft, or you have to be about 16 years old to solo. So you have to kind of get up there in age to start actually flying by yourself and building time to get your certificates. But there's also, I mean, yeah, well, I guess there's costs associated. So when I started flying an aircraft full of fuel, which they call wet, right? Renting an aircraft wet, you know, 125 an hour for an aircraft. That same aircraft today, though, with an instructor or without instructor is about 180, and with instructor you're talking 225, right on average, I would say. I mean, it's going to vary based on region, etc. So it is very, very expensive, but
but with simple math though, the as a flight instructor, you're only earning $45 an hour. Is
yeah,
that
45 to $50 an hour for a flight instructor. And that's why in terms of career trajectory, right? Let's just say you start at 18, right? You get your private pilot certificate. And this is in the US. It's a little different in Europe, but generally a similar path. But you get your private, then you get your instrument, then you get your commercial certificate, and then you get your instructor rating. And there's a couple different types of instructor ratings. But then you need 1,500 flight hours to go to fly at the airlines. So what most individuals do is they flight instruct and they spend 2, 3 years building their flight time, going from probably about 300 hours, when they finally get their commercial and CFI and everything else, all the way to getting those 1,500 hours. It's about a 2 to 3 year path. But, you're not making much money. But once you get to the airlines and you start in the regionals, which is a lot of the smaller aircraft, not as long of routes, and you work your way up to the majors like the Deltas, the British Airways, the American Airlines, and that's when you start making the real big bucks. They make very, very good money as you gain seniority.
so captains make good money, yeah.
Oh,
So
yeah. Captains
jetliner
nowadays.
captains. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in the US, it can be stupid money. Like FedEx, I think I was looking at their recent contract, but I believe like a very senior captain at FedEx is making over $1 million a year. I mean, it's stupid. It's stupid money. And then captain at like American Airlines, for example, I think it's like 350, $400,000 a year for a senior captain at American. So I mean, it is one of the few jobs out there that I would consider more of a trade than anything else, where you can become a millionaire at a pretty decent trajectory or rate. So it's pretty wild.
So the other route, you've obviously gone civilian. Did you ever consider like jet fighters?
I was just at AirVenture. I was telling you, I was just at AirVenture, which is the largest air show in the United States. It might be the world. And for a full week, it is the busiest airspace in the world for a full week. It is insanity. It is wild. If you don't know about AirVenture, highly recommend you check it out, or your listeners. But every year, I mean, and it's a combination of general aviation, military, civilian, like everything aviation is there. They had F-22s and F-35s flying, and every year I go, I say to myself, God damn it, my biggest regret is not trying to fly one of those fighter jets, and going in the military. It did cross my mind over the years, but they could never guarantee it. It's one of those things where it's like, oh yeah, you go in, you tell them you want to fly. There's no guarantees, and I'm on.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to do that and take that risk. But in retrospect and looking back on it, probably should have. But I'm perfectly happy where I've landed. No pun intended. But I look at it and I'm very envious every time I see those guys flying.
Yeah,
It's
so
insane.
in the American military flight schools, is it that if you drop out, you might end up as a grunt in the infantry or something? Because the Navy SEALs, if you drop out, they put you on a ship on just ship duty, right, for the rest of your service.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works for the Navy SEALs, but I mean, typically to fly, you have to be an officer in the military, so that you're not just going to be doing grunt work. I mean, you'll be doing something else of high value and specifically in a leadership role. But typically, if you're trying to be a pilot, you do it because you love it, and that's what you want to do. And if you end up not being able to do it, it is going to crush you. And I know individuals personally that have had that experience, whether it was due to them just dropping out because they didn't have couldn't cut it, or medical reasons, and they're just it kills them. It kills them. Uh, so yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So from flying the little planes, you graduate to more serious stuff. At what points do drones come in? Because I mean, you don't get to fly. The flying thing, the freedom of being in the air and all that, the city hopping, the master of the universe, shout out to Ozzy there. The master of the universe aspect is not there with drones. So why the hell drones?
Well, I'll kind of give you like my background and how I got into that. Kind of serendipitous in a way, but I started my career with every intent of flying commercially, right? But right when I started kind of pursuing that path, they passed a rule where you have to have 1,500 flight hours, and at the time, I didn't have 1,500 flight hours. I was actively building my time, so I minored in aviation safety. So I dove into safety management systems with Allegiant Airlines. Was there for many years building, their safety management system for flight ops and airport operations. It was incredible experience, and then continued to fly, with flight instruction and charter work, etc. Again, still hoping to build my time to eventually, sit right seat and fly for the airlines. However, as I continued further down the safety path, what started to kind of come into fruition was drones and drone delivery. And this was probably circa 2013, 2014. And Amazon, I think it was 2013, Amazon announced there was a big 60 Minutes episode where Jeff Bezos was stepping them through the Amazon drone delivery, right? And I was like, man, this is fascinating, this technology. My wife's been in tech too. So, I've always kind of been a tech nerd through my wife and followed various elements, aviation centric, but kind of like the leading bleeding edge of tech and aviation. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. And I've always been an avid LinkedIn guy. Always. Like, not with the intent of necessarily getting jobs with it, but just, connecting with individuals. I think there's just obviously tremendous value with that over time. But reached out to like some people from Prime Air, as was Amazon Prime Air, just to connect with them, right? About 6 to 8 months later, I get a phone call or an email, right? But it resulted in a phone call from Amazon Prime Air, and they were looking for somebody to build their safety management program for their UAS, delivery operation. Long story short, had a long conversation with my wife. We had one kid at the time. This was in Cambridge, England, where, Danny, we were fortunate enough to meet. Um,
That's where it all went downhill. Yeah.
well, that's where it all went down. But long story short, I ended up taking the job. It was a hard decision because I wanted to fly the big iron. I wanted to fly, wanted to fly in the airlines. But I said, hey, this is an opportunity to get into tech, diversify my experience, and we'll see what comes out of it. I could always go back to the airlines, right? And fast forward, 11 years later, I've been in drone delivery at Prime Air, at the company Zipline, and now with Wing, which is basically an Alphabet subsidiary. So it's just been a wild journey. And you ask, like, how did I get there and why drones, right? And it was just by circumstance, and taking a risk and trying something new. And what keeps me going is it's been a fairly ambiguous environment in the sense that the regulations didn't necessarily exist, right? We were kind of building the program, building the aircraft that is falling through the sky, right? Working with the regulators, working with industry to build something new. So there's like not too many like opportunities in aviation to have like a Wright, quote unquote, Wright brothers moment, right? And like truly like innovate something that is like brand new that is going to essentially change aviation forever, right? So like UAS or unmanned aerial systems or uncrewed aerial systems, as we now call them, that is one of those opportunities. And it's been a blast to work with the regulators, to work with industry, to like build this industry out and build the regulations. It's been challenging, it's been frustrating, but that's what's like really kept me going. Is just that level of excitement and engagement. And it's only now, 11 years later, to the point where the regulatory environment, the technology is all merging to where we can actually start scaling and it being economically viable. So it's been a wild ride, and that's what's kept me there. And you're right though. Like there's no physically, for at least commercial delivery drones, there is no physically, not physically controlling the aircraft, right? There are sectors in drones where you do like agricultural in some instances and first responders, right? There's various different sectors within UAS that you still got some stick and rudder skills, but you're flying from the ground, which isn't as fun, right? But still neat. But ours are autonomous. We have a pilot, but they're not the pilot in the traditional sense. They're more akin to like air traffic control or a dispatcher who's monitoring the weather, monitoring the airspace, and they can take action as needed. But in normal circumstances, the aircraft are doing everything autonomously. So
Yeah.
it's been an incredible ride. But I was reflecting on it actually like probably about a year ago that I now, when I hit the 10-year mark, I was in UAS or drones longer than I was in traditional aviation. And that was a real like point in my life where I went, holy shit. I anticipated since the time I was a kid to be flying these birds, big iron around the sky. But here I am in US, 10 years later. But fortunately, I still fly, got an airplane, take the kiddos. I get my fix. I get my fix, which is
Yeah.
good.
I have a couple of questions there. Number one, what you said 10 years ago when you were there, big news when Amazon Prime Air delivered a package 10 years ago to someone's backyard in the Cambridgeshire countryside or something. And at
Mhm.
that time, everybody, including me, is like, oh no, this is happening now. There's going to be these things. Hey,
Look at that. First
you have a
customer delivery. That's
cool, you
right.
have
That
a
that was
whole,
in Cambridge. That was from the Cambridge delivery right there. Look at that. Yeah.
on a wall full of cool certificates. That's a top five. So yeah, so we thought everything, oh my God, the air is gonna be just buzzing with these drones and everything's gonna come to our window. Are you at all disappointed that 10 years later it's not quite there yet? I mean, it's rare to see a drone delivering something here in the Western world. I suppose
Yeah.
in China it's more going on
Look,
more.
I'm not disappointed at all. I think that Jeff Bezos interview, he said, "Oh, I asked him how long until this is happening, right? Blah blah blah." And I think at the time he was like 2 3 years, right? Um, and obviously that's not the case because that interview was in 2013, 2014, right? But but it's all. I'd rather be slow and steady, right, than just kind of pushing it full force. Because really what it's all about is safe integration into the airspace, right? As a pilot myself, I go flying with my kids, right? I don't want to know there's a million drones around and they did it so quickly that there's not this kind of like safe infrastructure for integrating like uncrewed systems, flying, with actual, crewed aircraft, right? It would be a mess. So it's been slower, but it's been more methodical, because really my approach and the industry's approach is when there's traditional aircraft flying around, crewed aircraft, they shouldn't have to worry about the drones, right? They should not have to worry in any capacity. The UAS or the drones will deconflict accordingly. Not that those individuals, and when I'm flying, I don't have a responsibility to see them and avoid them because I do, but the technology should be such that those drones just simply avoid and stay out of applicable areas so there's no conflict. It's all about safe airspace integration. So we're now to the point, like I said, where this is now starting to happen. I think the sweet spot will be between 2027 and 2030, where you're going to see these things kind of proliferating, in many different metros.
Our AI guy, our AI expert is already saying the world's going to be over by
I heard
2030
that. Yeah,
anyway,
I've
so
heard that. I've heard that.
who cares?
uh, but no, I'm not disappointed. I mean, it's definitely been frustrating because the technology has been there, but we've had to kind of like slowly. There's a lot of like regulatory strategy and policy, development and evolution associated with this whole space. But like I said, I think we're finally to the point, and it's been methodical, and so that way we can be safe. So when we do scale significantly, this is not an issue. So, and the interesting thing, is the company I work for now. We're operating in Dallas, Texas, and Dallas Fort Worth area specifically, and we're over 20 plus locations. Right, we just launched in Charlotte. Later this year, we're launching in Tampa, Orlando, Atlanta, Houston. So it is now starting to happen. We're approaching the curve of the hockey stick where growth's happening. And you're going to start seeing these, but it's not going to be this deafening blackening of the skies like everyone thought at one time. Because, like, anytime you walk outside, there are helicopters, there are airplanes, there's all these things. There's UPS trucks, FedEx trucks, but we don't notice them, right? Because they're part of our everyday lives. And I do think UAS delivery, drone delivery, is just going to be just like that, where we don't even notice them. And it's just serendipitous. It's part of our everyday lives. And especially the convenience that it will bring and currently does bring to a very small segment, of course, but it'll be almost invisible unless you're actually looking for it. That's my
Yeah.
thought there.
What you said about airspace integration for us amateurs, integration sounds like mixing, but actually, aren't we talking about ceiling? So drones would be lower and your small planes a bit higher, and then jets alone out there in the tens of thousands of feet, right?
Generally, yes. I think that's a really simple way to put it. There are some integration elements, like, we're flying below 400 feet. Typically, our aircraft cruise around 150 to 200 feet, 250 feet above the ground. But where we do have issues or potential conflict, and where the really seamless integration component comes into, is like medevac helicopters, right? They're typically cruising along at, 500 feet, sometimes lower, right? So we have to make sure whatever system is put in place, that we're able to kind of like dynamically deconflict and avoid each other. And there's some instances where there can be low flying general aviation aircraft, very, very rare. And where we operate is urban environments, and in the United States, at least, it's technically illegal for them to be flying below 500 feet. So, long story short, there are some use cases where we have to ensure that drones and traditional aircraft have the ability to communicate and deconflict in some way. But yeah, like as you described, like the airspace layering is really kind of a key component to that. But where the interesting piece of this all comes into play is it's not only drones or uncrewed systems, aerial systems that are kind of like encroaching on this aviation segment. It's advanced air mobility. Advanced air mobility now is kind of like just larger drones intended to carry people. They traditionally called it air taxis, or cargo. But these aren't going to be flying at 400 feet and below. These are going to be flying, probably 10,000 feet or less, in some instances higher. There's some companies out there that are proposing just like full autonomy, nobody on board right off the bat. And there's some companies that are taking a more methodical, integration approach where they're going to have somebody on board. And a lot of these are electric systems. So, eVTOL technology, electric vertical takeoff and land. So some pretty incredible stuff that's happening in aviation. So like I kind of mentioned that Wright Brothers moment, like between UAS and advanced air mobility, or AAM, like those two pieces are like the next big thing that we're seeing in terms of like driving innovation in aviation. But yeah, so like back to your initial question about airspace integration. Yeah, it's for drones, it's a kind of a layering aspect, but there's some are unique cases where we do have to communicate. But the advanced air mobility is going to be sharing the airspace with traditional aircraft or crewed aircraft.
Yeah.
So there is going to have to be a new or uh, evolved methodology for airspace integration. And another piece of that from a drone perspective at low level is UAS to UAS, or drone to drone communication, right? Because it's not just my company out there making deliveries. There's Amazon and Zipline and a handful of others. So there has to kind of be some interoperability where those aircraft at low level can communicate and deconflict. So there's different mechanisms, vehicle to vehicle communication. There's something called uncrewed traffic management that's been in development in partnership with industry and NASA since, geez, 2013, 14, if not prior. And those are now starting to actually come into fruition. So like again, like there's some really cool things happening in this space. And that's why I think like it's again, the Wright brothers moment, and why I think between now and 2030 is kind of like the sweet spot where we're going to see this like explosion of like economically viable UAS and advanced air mobility operations taking place.
I suppose like the dystopian view here is that because they'll have, let's say now you said Amazon, let's say there's FedEx and a couple of others who are competing. They all have a contract to, I don't know, drones are going to go pick up like a waste from where a waste management plant and dump it somewhere else. And the more parcels they deliver, the more money they make. At some point, whatever AI is controlling the drone might make an autonomous decision to fly danger close in order to make more profit because it doesn't matter if I die because I'm uncrewed. And then you'll have collisions because they'll just go aggressively for the same target where there's profit to be had. And then let's say there's a medevac helicopter. You said they'll be interoperable. There'll be a messaging system like, hey, please, profit making drones, please bug off. I need to go in here. Then we're trusting these systems to be like, oh, all right, no problem. I'll wait. But will they? Like, that's my dystopian question is, if they are not afraid of their lives and they want to make profit, right? That's what they're going to be programmed to do.
Yeah, look, I can only comment so much on that. But my only hope is that, from my perspective, when it comes to AI integration, especially for the use of drones and delivery or any other kind of element where a drone is used, I hope that we responsibly integrate AI into that system in a way that minimizes or eliminates that possibility. Um, I don't know if it will be possible over time, but the good news is a lot of these organizations, right, are not quite using AI for control of the aircraft. Not to say it won't happen over time, 'cause it probably will, but I don't necessarily think that will be the case over the next few years. But but my only hope can be that whatever path we do take as an industry, we do it in a very responsible, methodical, much like airspace integration way, so we can ensure that what you just described does not happen. But I am a fan of movies like The Terminator and everything else. I think are great, but I really do hope, because I've heard a lot of individuals on AI who are a little doom and gloom, but I've also heard the opposite perspective. So
Yeah.
my fingers are crossed that we maybe land somewhere in between.
Okay. Good opportunity for a listener question here. You mentioned movies that you're a fan of. Aviation movies, what am I missing from the list and how would you rank them? We got The Aviator, Top Gun, Con Air, Nick Cage,
Con Air, what a classic. Uh,
Up, the kids movie Up, aren't they aviating in that? What do
Iron
you have?
Iron Eagle. Have you seen Iron Eagle?
No, I'm writing
Ooh,
that on the list.
that's a classic. I think it's either the late '80s or early '90s. They use like F-16s. It's entertaining. It's not as high quality as like Top Gun, but that's a pretty solid one. But I'm not like a. I don't really. I get a little pissed off when I watch aviation movies sometimes. I'm sure it's the same way for like doctors watching medical shows, because I watch it and I go, that's wrong, that's wrong. Or they show the inside of an airplane and then they show the outside. I'm like, that wasn't right. That wasn't the inside of that airplane that they're showing. Right. So like I find all these inaccuracies and it just like pisses me off. My wife has been telling me for like, I mean, we're going to be married like 15 years next year, which is insane, together almost 20. But she's like, she's been telling me this forever. She's like, you need to start a blog or a channel or something and talk about all this when you see these things. But it drives me bonkers. Not that I don't love aviation movies, because Top Gun is badass for sure. But it drives me bonkers. That's why for me, I'm a sci-fi guy, because it's like, give me something I don't know outside of the realm of possibility, at least today, as far as we know. And I'm a happy camper.
Well, obviously none of that applies to Snakes on a Plane, which is 100% realistic. Uh,
One of the greatest movies of all time. Samuel L. Jackson's greatest performance.
yeah, I refuse to accept anything else. One of the greatest movie titles of all time. Keep it simple, stupid. Snakes on a Plane.
I'm a fan of the KISS principle. Can't go wrong. Hey, but speaking of movies, sci-fi, Fifth Element. That's my go-to sci-fi.
Okay. I was a kid who was never into sci-fi or fantasy, and I need to put myself in that uncomfortable zone as well. I did hear about the movie though, so I guess it must be good.
Yeah, and I'll tell you right now, it's just for me, it's about I don't like. like any types of dramas that take place in today's space. Not always the case. I'll watch them, but like I want to be transported somewhere that like is just I can use my imagination. It's something that just generally can't happen to me on a day-to-day basis. Things that I watch where I'm like, this is my life, basically. I'm like, yeah, no, transport me somewhere where I can feel different and alive. That's kind of my take.
So like mafia movies, that's just the life of any Florida teenager, right?
Well,
Fights.
I just got some new sunglasses, so whenever I put them on, my personality becomes Jim Scarducci. So I embrace my inner Italian, for sure. But I do love a good Italian. I do love a good mom movie. That I can get into.
So your heritage, you look Italian, but Marshall, the last name, where's the?
Yeah, I did one of those DNA tests, and I think I'm 49% Italian, and then I'm kind of a mix of like German, English, like a little bit of everything. But the interesting piece, I'm 1.5% Filipino. So
Ah,
I got that going for me. But yeah, yeah. But my mom's first name is or last name is Granito. So that's
yeah.
where a lot of the Italian comes from. And then my dad's mother is 100% Italian. Oh,
Italians got the sauces. I wouldn't mess with them, but Filipinos got the barbecue. That sweet Asian barbecue
yeah,
thing.
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Uh, are you offended like on the internet they have these memes like Italian or pervert? Like they post a picture of an Italian looking
There's
fella.
nothing that Dan, it is nothing that offends me. You really gotta like do something to offend me. I take the world with a grain of salt, and you gotta enjoy every moment. So there's not too many things that piss me off.
All right. Except here's a stupid question. Mentioning the internet and how we consume aviation, us internet perverts, is we watch. I don't recommend watching crash videos, but a lot of air traffic control interactions with pilots. Why are they so rude to you guys all the time? Like, is that a real thing or is that just the internet?
Um, it's I'll say this, it's the rarity, but it does happen. I mean, I have there's so much respect for air traffic control, like especially in like London or New York, LA, like the amount of traffic that they are dealing with is absurd in some instances. So I can only imagine their level of frustration. And when a pilot gets on and he's not prompt, not speaking clearly, or whatever the case may be, like I think they have every right to get frustrated. And there's some pilots, especially senior pilots, who will get a little snippy right back at them. And that's when you get your internet sensation. I would say it probably happens daily. You just don't always hear about it. But they're real. They're real. I mean, it does happen. I've heard a few instances.
Yeah, I love those conversations that both are just being very laconic, but definitely pissed off at
Yeah.
each other.
But yeah, it's great. It is great. It makes for great content, that's for sure.
Speaking of busy airspace, why are there so few things landing at night at these big airports? Because you could take the sort of load off the air traffic control and the luggage handling. The whole operation could have a little rest while still keeping it open for like a few flights an hour, right? Nobody lands at night.
There are a lot of, at least in the US, there's a lot of red eye flights that take place that usually typically go from East Coast to West Coast. But it's typically a lot of the larger airports. You don't see that a lot of smaller airports. They do exist, but it's to your point, there's not a lot of them. But I think it just comes down to, the airlines, they're customer focused, right? They want to kind of enable individuals to travel at reasonable hours. So I mean, I think that's the driving factor behind it. But I have seen a trend of an increase in red eye flight availability that take place at night. That could just be my perception because I'm traveling more for work. But it is happening. But where there is an incredible amount of night traffic is the cargo sector. FedEx, UPS, like DHL, they operate primarily at night. So if like my wife's from Kentucky, Louisville, and Louisville is the UPS hub. If you go there and watch night operations, it is insanity. It is just like a normal, very busy airport, but at night. So there are segments that are traveling primarily at night. It's just you just don't see it as much. Um, but you're absolutely right. Don't disagree.
When you fly at night, you see nothing, right? This instrument flying thing. That must be terrifying. At what age, when are you allowed to learn that?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like once you get your private pilot certificate, you can start pursuing an instrument rate from pretty much right after that. And I'll say this, I mean, you can see flying at night, you can see, especially if you're in a large like urban environment, right? There's a lot of lights and everything else. So, that makes things easy. Um, where it becomes very, very challenging is exactly like when you can see nothing. So whether you're flying over the water or, a large rural environment, it can become the most disorienting thing that you've ever experienced. I have a kind of shit your pants story that when I first became an instrument pilot, well, this was when I was a little bit after that. I was flying some charter operations, and I brought somebody down to Key West. Um, Landed in the day, but it was night to come back. And it was really the first time I was going to be flying in like really like hard IFR conditions because it's pitch black out there, right? Pitch black. Can't see anything once you take off and you're flying towards the Everglades in southern Florida. And I'll never forget. I took off and started climbing out, and within a matter of moments, I felt like I was spinning. It's called spatial disorientation, and literally, your instruments tell you you're flying straight and level or climbing, and your wings are level and airspeed looks great, but you literally feel like you're spinning, whether it's to the left or the right. It is one of those wild feelings in the world, and you have to trust your instruments. But I remember being very scared. And it took about 15 minutes for me to orient myself and calm myself down. And finally, I got to the point where it's like, okay, I can trust this. And occasionally now, when I'm flying, instrument flying in low visibility conditions, I get that momentarily, but over time, you kind of build I don't want to say an immunity, but something close to that sensation, that feeling, just through repetition. But when you're first starting as an instrument pilot, I mean, a lot of people get themselves killed because they're overconfident and, they feel like they can do everything. But you can't, and you have to be able to recognize that. So people get killed every year in general aviation, flying in low visibility conditions and get themselves disoriented and slowly spiral into the ground. That's what happened to JFK. JFK off the coast of Long Island. He was in a slow, spiral over the, descending and ran into the ocean. So it is challenging, but that's what makes getting your instrument rating and flying instruments one of the most challenging or most rewarding things you can do. It was the most rewarding certificate that I received.
What's the JFK story? Have I
Yeah,
missed?
so like, was it JFK Jr.? I forget, but he was flying his personal aircraft off the coast of Long Island. I mean, geez, this is the early 2000s, I think, and I think he had his family with him, and he got spatial disorientation, and he was flying, but he was slowly descending in like a spiral descent. But he thought, I think from what I remember, he was flying. He thought he was flying straight and level, and had what they call CFIT, controlled flight into terrain or the water in this case, and killed everyone on board. And that's a perfect. And that's like a perfect example of how people get themselves killed every year because they either aren't instrument rated and get themselves into instrument conditions, or they are and they don't trust their instruments and fly by the seat of their pants. But when we talk safety, some of the advancements in autopilot systems and the cost of those units coming down, most general aviation aircraft now have pretty robust autopilot. So if you do get yourself in a situation like that, you've been put on the autopilot. In the worst case, my aircraft has a big level button. It says level on it. So if I'm like, holy shit, I don't know where I am, I can press the level button and it will put me in straight and level flight, right? So there's now technology that is like starting to just become a mainstay in every single general aviation aircraft that will save lives and do save lives on a daily basis. I'm sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty wild.
Uh, when that feeling comes, at the risk of sounding glib, but aren't there more low-tech instruments you could have, like a cup of coffee, where you can see that the liquid is not going nuts in there, so you must be
100,
okay?
no,
Or
100%. No, and that's like, I mean, that's essentially what you're doing with your instruments. You're cross-referencing various instruments to say, okay, like, do I trust them? Like, is if one instrument saying one thing, is there another instrument that's verifying that position in time and space, right? So you're constantly referencing those instruments. But even if I had that cup of coffee as an additional instrument, or you still get that feeling, right? Like that just disoriented feeling. And again, like it typically exists with newer pilots flying instrument conditions or somebody who hasn't flown instruments in a long time. But you start to get a little bit of an immunity built to that feeling. But no matter, even if you had that cup of coffee, you'd still get it in the beginning, uh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
Um, Speaking of like a crowded airspace and all these things that need to communicate amongst themselves, and there are more and more coming on the eastern seaboard of the United States. A lot of people don't want to be communicating with anyone because they're bringing in contraband, people, drugs, weapons, whatever it is. Any run-ins with those, and how are the drone companies taking that stuff into account? Because they could be landing anywhere, right?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't think I have an answer in terms of like, at least I haven't been exposed to anything of that in like the drone space or anything like that. But what I do know is that drones are now being used pretty significantly by Border Patrol to help exactly identify through their various sensing packages on board the aircraft to help identify these aircraft, boats, submarines, whatever they may be. And they're highly effective, unlike previously where you had to have an aircraft up and people and everything else. You have an uncrewed system up, can stay up for hours and hours and hours, and you got a sensing package that has some automation built in. It's amazing what's happening, like using that technology to at least find these individuals or aircraft, whatever they may be. But it hasn't been in terms of like aircraft deconfliction or having causing conflict in the airspace. There's very little that I've ever experienced or seen. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Just I've been fortunate enough to not been exposed to it in any capacity. But what really fascinates me though is UAPs. So I've seen a few things that I can't explain that I think pose a higher risk than anybody smuggling any drugs anywhere.
I wasn't gonna go there. I was gonna like maybe invite you for a separate conversation about this, but now we have to hear it.
Oh, I would nerd
Okay.
out with you. I'm a big fan. And look, I have literally seen things three times that I cannot explain, and I feel like I'm a pretty competent individual when it comes to like aircraft, both civilian and military and everything else, and lights on board the aircraft and those signatures and patterns that they omit, right? Like, but I've been following it since probably pretty closely since like 2017, and all the news stories and all the videos and the MH13. Is it MH13? Is that the aircraft that disappeared? Or was it
Yeah,
213?
the
I forget the Malaysian Airlines.
Malaysian one. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Now there's a video of the orb circling them, and nobody disproved that. I don't know. There's a lot of fascinating things um, that I think is just very interesting. Whether it's true or not, it's entertaining nonetheless. So.
But I agree, entertaining. But you are a competent person. So give us one encounter, and everyone can make up their own mind. Uh,
Yeah,
because a lot of this stuff is reported by pilots who see shit like, wait a minute, I know
yeah.
planes that's not behaving like a plane.
You used to be shunned for reporting anything, right? But now it's like it's becoming normalized where it's like, oh no, if you see something, report it. You know, you're not going to be shunned because of it now, right? Like, so we're finally to a point where, like, both on the military side and civilian side, like, reporting these things when you do see them, like, is encouraged, and nobody's going to be like you're a crazy person because of it. Um, Now, when you're at the bar hanging out with your buddies, they might say that, but that's a different story. But I'll say this. So I've seen it. I've seen one thing while I was in the air and two things while I was on the ground. And the most intriguing sighting that I had was actually right here at my house. So this was this was like not quite peak COVID, but pretty close. Like I think it was like 2020, late 2020, I believe. Went outside, take the trash out. It's nighttime. Not a cloud in the sky. It's a moonless night, but not a cloud in the sky. Right, beautiful weather. Go outside to take the trash out. Walking from the side of the house, I look up, and I'll send you the video. I took some video of this. I look up, I go, and I'm looking, and there's these lights. I look straight up, and there's like three of them, and I look down past the horizon, and there's about five or six. I go, what the fuck are these? Literally. I mean, I literally said this in the video, which I'll send you. And basically, the light that they were emitting was the color of a candle, but was not flickering. It was very dim, but was not flickering. There were no other lights on it, but there was three in the front that were arranged almost like in a large triangle form. And then they were probably every I would say probably half mile, another one in this exact location behind it, behind it, behind it, behind it. There were about, I think, 10 to 15. And they did not look very high. They looked fairly low. Obviously, it's very tough to tell. But I said, okay, of course, immediately jumped on these are like UAPs. What the hell am I looking at? But as a pilot, I'm like, okay, let me quickly check my what I with the tools that I have at my disposal. So I quickly pulled up ForeFlight, which is an app I use for flying, which you can see all the aircraft that are broadcasting their positions, everything else, nothing. I went and I looked at Starlink. Are there any Starlinks? Just in case I'm really disoriented and this is a lot higher than I think. None. Right. So like I quickly eliminated those possibilities, which typically are like the highest likelihood of an encounter, right? But I continue to watch these things. They're not making a noise. They're not emitting any light signature. They're in just a steady, you know, candle colored light. But the fascinating thing is, as I'm watching, they disappear at the exact same spot in the sky. And again, there's no clouds. I can tell, right? Like there's no clouds in the sky. Disappears, disappears. And I'm watching them as they come over the horizon. Disappears, disappears in the exact same spot. So that was the most intriguing and fascinating thing. And fast forward to this year, and all of these like lights and orbs that everyone's reporting is the exact same color signature that I saw. So it's that to me is like, okay, there's something bigger here that like we don't quite understand because what others are seeing via video is exactly what I saw. So whether it's some unknown military technology or something else, look, it was interesting nonetheless.
Yeah, and hey, as you said, like this stuff has gone from like we're in a place where it's no judgment. It's just interesting as hell. Like people
Yeah,
the more
100%.
time you spend in the air, the more likely you are that something flying, like whatever, birds will do something weird that no human has ever observed a bird doing because they're up there and we just haven't studied it. But still, like these phenomena, like that's creepy. I mean, but what are we gonna do about it? It's not like you're gonna get a shotgun and start firing. Like this.
Exactly. I
Yeah.
don't say I kind of take the approach. It's like nobody can disprove them, but nobody can prove them, at least quite yet, or at least as we know. So I think the best thing we can all do is just observe and have a conversation and enjoy the show. At least until there's some type of disclosure, if that ever does exist.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see.
So, but I mean, speaking of disappointing things, I mean, no disclosure has come under the current administration about any little green men being killed.
No, they said they were going to do something like that. So I'm waiting.
Yeah.
I'm hopeful, but we'll see. My take is if they did say that, okay, we're going to disclose this thing, right? If it doesn't happen, that tells me there's more to the story that would obviously either be detrimental to society or national security. That like
Yeah.
he gets in there and goes, oh, I shouldn't be doing this. So we'll see. We'll see.
Well, at least no men in black came and like took your phone away after filming it, so that's a good sign.
No, well, I did wake up the next morning at a Waffle House. I had no memory of getting there, but
Yeah.
who knows?
Yeah. Dude, fantastic. Can we get a what's it called? Like a memorandum of understanding that if anything weird happens in the air, that you'll come back on and explain what you've seen and your
You will be
theory.
one of the first to know. You will be one of the first to know
All
for
right.
sure. Yeah.
What's your theory on the Indian crash then? Was it depressed pilot? Now they're dumping it all on the pilots.
Yeah, I don't like to. I mean, I don't like to speculate necessarily because I like to ensure that the investigative bodies can, they're the ones really kind of getting all the data and information. I'm sure going to be it'll be highly accurate whatever they determine. But I mean, look, from what I know thus far, it doesn't look good on the pilot, right? Mental health in aviation has been actively being discussed for certainly the past like 3, 4, 5 years in the U.S. because it's really kind of an issue that it's speaking of shun, right? Like UAP sightings, like they're no longer really shunned, but if you have anxiety as a pilot, which a lot of people have anxiety, right? And you're taking a specialized medication, basically what it does is it makes your medical that you have to acquire as a pilot, it's no longer valid. So you lose your job. or you're put on furlough. So a lot of these pilots either aren't getting the help that they need or taking the medication that they need because of fear of their job. So there's a lot of conversation actively going on where when it comes to mental health, the FAA and other regulators being a little bit more flexible to ensure that if individuals are depressed or have some other type of conditions that they can get the help they need rather than shunning it because if this turns out to be another pilot induced crash, which certainly seems to be pointing in that direction at this point, it'd be a darn shame, and I hope it's a forcing function for the broader industry to really reevaluate and make it a priority how they address mental health in professional aviation or even general aviation because it is an ongoing issue. Um,
Yeah.
but it does seem like, I mean, look, there's so many airlines, those fuel cutoff switches, right, that are kind of in the center console. They're very, very hard to move. I mean, you have to like cut, it's like a detent, you got to pull them out. A lot of procedures in a lot of airlines have it where the who's not flying or the one not operating the throttle is actually guarding those with their hand. Now, I can't say if Air India has that process procedure in place, but that is there by many airlines to mitigate either accidental or somebody purposely trying to move those switches
Mm.
because they don't just accidentally move. Like I'm sure there's probably some edge case where maybe that can happen, but not on two engines simultaneously. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I think all things are pointing to some type of human error, whether accidental or purposeful. But it is, yeah, that is sad, especially when that's the case. I mean, it reminded me, I think was it a German airline many years ago, like 5, 6, 7 years ago, where the pilot, crashed into the mountains
Alps.
intentionally at the Alps, and again, that comes back to like a mental health question.
Yeah.
You know,
It's an
uh,
interesting, yeah, I've never even thought of it from that perspective, that it's really the source might be in the pilots themselves. Like we start solving these problems, we put in these guardrails, like you said, like we'll have the co-pilot have the key under a lock somewhere so nobody can mess with these buttons. But actually, the problem might just be that an attitude to mental health that's healthier, right?
yeah, and it's sure it's not it's not going to solve all problems by any means, but I think it's at least can help mitigate future events from occurring. And this kind of broadens back to technology. There's a lot of talk with enhanced levels of automation and other things. With eventually getting to one pilot for air carrier operations rather than two, right? And because the automation is getting to that point where you can do that, but the airline pilots unions and other organizations are pushing against it. A, because it takes jobs away. But B, there's the argument to be made around kind of like exactly that. Well, if you have one pilot, right, that creates a whole new dynamic in terms of aircraft security and safety and what that looks like. And especially if mental health's not addressed, like I don't see a day where that will happen anytime soon. Maybe for cargo operations, a single pilot, like for large aircraft, but air passenger travel, I think we're a ways away from it.
Yeah. That actually brings us to another listener question here. This one is from Jack. Jack's an idiot, so don't worry too much about that. He has a two-parter for you. Number one, is it true, speaking of lone pilots and stuff, is it true that on the smaller private jets, that carry overrated golfers from tournament to tournament, is it true that there's a button if something happens to that pilot, that there's a button that the passengers can press and it'll land itself?
Great question. There is, but there's a caveat to that. In only new equipment that has been certified for that auto land capability. So this is a brand new capability that's really kind of only come into its own probably the past like 3 years. There's only a handful of small private aircraft that have it now. Like there's one that's probably the most unique aircraft and probably the coolest looking aircraft that has that capability is the Cirrus Vision Jet. Very, very cool, single engine jet with a V-tail, like really, really neat. Cirrus single engine piston also has a button that was recently, I think, rolled out this in the past couple of months, I think, where it's an auto land capability if the pilot passes out. There's a handful of jets and large turboprops who have it, but again, very small subset of aircraft actually have that capability. Older aircraft do not. There's no if the pilot goes down, good luck. Um, so there's some successful stories of people landing the aircraft.
And Mythbusters landed, and they landed a simulator successfully based on instructions delivered by the
Yeah,
radio.
it can look. You can do it for sure. And flying the plane is it's hard. I mean, it definitely has its challenges. That's the easy part. Everything else is like rules, regulations, process. Like that's where it gets complicated. Um, but I do say I will say like probably a lot of the newer aircraft that are being manufactured and will be rolling out, especially like private jets, etc., probably will start to have this capability as just a normal part of its ecosystem. Another cool safety feature too is parachutes. Cirrus, both the Cirrus jet, the Vision jet, and all their like kind of a single engine piston aircraft have a parachute, which is really, really
Entire plane or
for the entire
passengers?
plane, for the entire plane. And
Wow.
Cirrus has had it for many years for their pistons in the jet. That's a new feature for a jet in general. And it's saved a lot of lives thus far throughout Cirrus's history. And there's a lot of smaller general aviation aircraft who have whole aircraft parachute systems.
Wow.
So there's some really cool, unique safety features that exist in general aviation today. I don't think they'll ever make their way. Well, Autoland exists now on airliners in many instances. They've had that technology for a while, but not in the with the ability to just press one single button. It's usually a series of procedures and button pushing for large air carriers. But maybe there'll be a day where one day airliners have that capability from
Yeah.
like a single button push, right? But they won't have any whole aircraft parachutes anytime soon. That's for sure.
Yeah, I saw a concept video that for a jet, it would work. The parachute concept would be that somehow the passenger area compartment would be detachable, and then when something happens, almost like an ejector button, they eject the entire passenger compartment out of the
I
aircraft.
didn't
And
scary that to
that,
be as a passenger.
yeah, and then you're hanging in a parachute. You better have your seatbelt on, by the way, because I'm
Yeah,
assuming,
yeah.
yeah,
Brace positions, please.
I need
Oh,
to
yeah,
be
yeah.
straight because that seatbelt's gonna have to hold a lot of weight if we're hanging upside down in a parachute.
Oh my gosh, that's
Yeah,
hilarious.
yeah, man. Jack's second part here was, I mean, I said he's an idiot because the obvious answer is myself and Hulk Hogan's son. But who's the greatest hockey player you ever played with?
Greatest hockey player I ever played with. Like growing up with, or just like had an opportunity to play with?
Yeah, had an opportunity to play with.
Probably Vincent LeCavier. I don't know if you remember Vincent LeCavier. He was the captain of the Lightning for many years. I played in a charity tournament, and he happened to be on my team. So he was
Pretty
probably
good
the
passing, eh? Yeah.
oh man, amazing. Yeah, he was probably the greatest and one of the most interesting or unique players I ever had the opportunity to play with. Actually, played on my adult beer league team. It was a gentleman named Chris Dingman. He won two Stanley Cups, one with the Avalanche and one with the Lightning. But he was a bruiser. In juniors, he was a goal scorer, but then he had to change his game when he got to the Chell, and he was a bruiser. Long goatee, really interesting dude. Big personality. You could tell he was a
Yeah.
glue guy. He was a locker room guy. That would be
But
my
yeah.
guess.
But how
Yeah.
good is in a beer league game? Like you're in my estimation, you're pretty good. But when you go in a beer league game, how good is someone who was a fighter in the NHL, just skill wise?
You can tell a lot of times too, because actually somebody plays in well, I don't think he does anymore, but he did play in the NHL and the B League here in Charlotte. And he was definitely, I don't know if he was an enforcer, but he was kind of a lower tier. I think he played one or two seasons in the NHL. Even that, they're just incredible. They're smooth, they're silky. Even though he was older, I mean, you could just see the kind of God-given talent that if you're blessed to make it to the NHL and play even a handful of games, like it's a different level. Even kids now. I mean, I'm 38, and I'm playing in a adult league with a lot of times, especially during the summer, with kids are playing like in the OHL and NAHL, and the kids are on a different level now. In terms of like the training and everything else, like I was pretty fast, but I'm like I don't remember being that fast.
And they fucking care about what they eat. There's no beers.
I remember I love throwing. Maybe we're like a little old school, right? Part of that old school hockey generation. But I love throwing back the beers with the boys, and doing all
Yeah.
that, right? Having a good time. And I don't think that, I mean, I'm sure it exists, but you're right. It's very health conscious and very driven, which is great.
Well, I was in like house parties with as a 15-year-old with people who ended up in the NHL and they're like vomiting in the bathroom and stuff. It's no no like athletic prospect in this current generation would ever be in a house
No,
party throwing.
no, it's this generation is so different. The level of focus, it is just unreal, unreal.
Hey,
Yeah.
Joey, thank you so much for your time. I'll let you get into the air here. Just quickly, first of all, what are you flying and where today? And any public service announcement for the end?
No, I own a fairly recent aircraft owner. I purchased a Vashon Ranger, which is manufactured in Seattle, Washington. And a lot of my flights today, I was just at an air show slash like kind of like industry conference, and spent a little money on some like little upgrades here and there. So today I'm going to be going and just doing a little installation. Probably take one of my kiddos. I try to always take one kid. Putts around the Charlotte area. We do a lot of flying over. There's a big lake here called Lake Norman. So we'll go flying. Might shoot an instrument approach today for currency, just to make sure I'm keeping up on my skills. But yeah, that's kind of what I'm doing today. But no real. I mean, the only public service announcement I would have, Danny, is when it comes to aviation, right? Like I've touched kind of the two worlds of drones and traditional aviation with commercial aviation. The level of opportunity out there in aviation is huge. It's not a career where it's at least changing where if you're going to be a pilot, you don't necessarily need a 4-year degree, right? It's becoming more of a trade than anything else, but it's a very, very well-paying trade, if not the best. Um,
Yeah.
but there's just so many opportunities between engineering on an OEM side with like a Boeing or Airbus. There's just so many unique flying opportunities, and if you're really into tech, like I mentioned, between drones and advanced air mobility or AAM, like I hate to use it, but like the sky's the limit. Like it's just so many cool things happening right now. And it's like so hard to keep track of, like especially as like a working, industry professional, like constantly trying to keep up on the latest and greatest. It's challenging because there's so much cool stuff happening.
Yeah. I forgive you for using sky's the limit because I already said fly on the wings of love. That's fine. And also, we want you back because we have to get deeper into drones and aliens and all that. This was a fantastic intro, but as our AI expert Matt would say, all the limited compute I had in my brain, I probably forgot to ask you a bunch of interesting questions. So I'll hassle you again. In the meantime, everyone, Marshall Aviation on YouTube, really fun videos of Joey flying around with his family. And my announcement, let me get another cliche in there. Fly steady out there, okay?
Thanks, Dan, man. This has been fun, man. I really appreciate
All
it.
right. Thank you, Joey. Thank you.